Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is Monday, January 12th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. On this episode, we dig into a big signing that dropped over the weekend. Alex Bregman heads to the Cubs on a new 5-year, $175 million deal. Lots of fallout with that one. We will dig into that here in just a few minutes. We got some information about Gunnar Henderson last week that I thought was pretty interesting because I think it explains a lot about what happened to him production-wise in 2025. Got a mailbag question about different projection systems that we're going to try to crack open, and a few other news and notes around the league, including a suspension for Max Kepler. So, how'd the weekend treat you?
Oh, pretty good, other than the fact that I sliced my finger open.
Oh, so baseball writers get the same kinds of injuries as baseball players. What were you doing? Let me guess. You were opening a new ping pong paddle out of one of those snap-tight plastic containers, and the scissors didn't cut you, but the really sharp plastic did.
Oh, that's the worst. Or like the cardboard paper cuts. Oh, no, it is too cold here for ping pong. What are you talking about? It's like 35. It's so cold.
Never too cold for ping pong.
I was making butternut squash soup, man. Butternut squash is so hard to peel, man. Those are
vicious.
Butternut squash is like the most preposterous vegetable because it looks like wood. You knock on it. It does not seem like it is something you could eat. It literally looks like a decorative gourd, and then you can make it into delicious soup. But it takes a fair amount of work, and sometimes you slice your finger open.
Yeah, no, you need legitimately sharp knives to deal in butternut squash. I'd like to go back in a time machine and watch all the points in human history when humans figured out how to eat various fruits and vegetables. I want successes and failures, though. Like, I want to see, I want to see how much trial and error there was. How many things humans tried to eat that they couldn't eat, and
some dead people.
I don't want to see like the fatalities. I just want to see like hey, we tried to eat a durian or something, and it just
man.
Without tools, how are you going to get that thing open, right?
There's and who thought that looked like something you wanted to eat at first?
Yeah, and I think there's probably
gross-looking thing. Let's eat that.
Probably some historical points of desperation and whatnot, of course, of the course of human history. But I just want to know, like, how'd they decide butternut squash would actually be something we could eat?
This thing that looks like wood.
yeah, they could do some damage. Let's get into it, though. Alex Bregman signs with the Cubs. It's 5 years. It's $175 million, although about $70 million of that is deferred money, so that lowers the present-day value down to the $150 to $155 million range. This is from Ken Rosenthal's column that I was reading this morning. That's all fine and well, right? I mean, we'll dig into why that matters over the course of this conversation, and I think the first question people have about this addition is how much production did the Cubs buy at the plate over the next 5 years? Because Alex Bregman is a different kind of hitter, right? He's not your typical power hitting corner infielder. He's a great plate discipline, slower than you'd like bat speed sort of player that still does a good job hitting the ball hard. Each of the last 2 seasons, hard hit rates above 40%. But how do you think this bat will age as he continues to move through his 30s?
Yeah, I thought I would look at some comps, and I didn't want to keep it to comps that are recent so that we have bat speed because that just limits your field. And he actually does stand out in a way that limits his comps pretty quickly. And if you look at how good he is at the plate at making contact and taking walks, he really separates himself. He's 40% better than league average at not striking out and at walking. And that combination is really rare. So what I thought was, let me just look through all of the history of baseball and look at different players that had that same ability to walk and not strike out. And let me look at what they did after 31. Now, I also wanted them to have a little bit of power and defensive value. So that's what created this list. And on this list, you'll have some guys that played around the turn of the century, like Arky Vaughan. I just love that name for some reason, Arky Vaughan. And just there's some really great just names for namesakes on here. Mickey Cochran, Wade Boggs, Eddie Collins Sr. I don't know. For some reason, I love those names. And the name that really pops off the field off the page for me is Joe Morgan, because there's some similarities in infield position that they played. Defensive value was through the roof. Joe Mauer's not a great comp because he was a catcher. He moved off catcher. That's why he lost a lot of wins above replacement later, because he was a DH. And his career was cut short by injuries sustained basically catching. So I just don't see that happening for Bregman. There is of course the chance that he ends up like Lenny Dykstra and has a great run up and then doesn't add that much after 30. That could happen. That can happen to anybody. He's had the quad strains and the thigh injuries, and those kind of things can happen to Bregman too. But just doing this, just not striking out, and walking and having defensive value like he does, puts him in a place where the average guy that was his comp after 31 put another 20 wins on the table. So, of course, that's skewed when you talk about average, because Joe Morgan put up 47 wins, Roger Connor put up 40 wins, Wade Boggs put up 37, and then there's a bunch of singles. So it could go either way. I get it, but it's a good list to be on. It's a really good feel for what to do at the plate. And I think that those kind of players can make the most out of what they, make the most out of what they have in terms of bat speed or whatever.
Yeah, I think I've always sort of bought that as a combination of traits that Bregman would have that would enable him to age well, right? I wasn't worried about him getting a good long-term deal, even though this took a little longer than expected. And I was firmly on the side that another pillow deal wasn't really the answer either, just because the number of suitors could maybe only go down for a player at this stage of his career. But you look at the projections for 2026 and you think about every public-facing system that you have at Fangraphs has him under a 15% K rate. All but one have him hitting at least 23 homers, because he's an every single day sort of player. Like, very rarely gets days off. Basically has to be hurt to get days off, with the exception being Oopsie at 18 homers. But we know Oopsie, of all those projection systems, is the one that has the most bat speed heavy sort of factors in it, right? So I'm not surprised to see that Oopsie is the outlier from a home runs perspective. I think you do have to consider the park factors as well. Wrigley is going to be the most challenging home park Alex Bregman has played in after spending most of his career in Houston and spending 2025 in Boston. Both of those home parks are great for righties. Yeah, but you're rewarded heavily in those two parks.
And we just saw Isaac Paredes have a really hard time pulling the ball in Wrigley and basically leaving town or being traded out of town because it wasn't a good fit for the park. However, Isaac Paredes is the guy who almost does everything down the line, and Bregman is more of a pull in the pull power alleys. I don't know how much of a difference that'll make in Wrigley. It is a park that suppresses righty offense, so there is some risk there, but they thought the fit was good enough. And I think it has to do with those soft factors. I think there's actually some parallels to the Dansby Swanson signing, because Dansby Swanson has the weakest arm, among shortstops in baseball. And I thought by now he wouldn't even be playing shortstop anymore. But like Bregman, Dansby Swanson has a decent approach at the plate and has sort of feel for the game. Is that something I can put out there? I mean, I feel like Swanson's done fine for his contract, and it was a similar kind of upper middle class contract. It's hard to say that because some people say this is a lot of money for this type of player, but it's not the $300 million deals that we're seeing for the very top players. So this has been the Cubs' milieu, is to like jump into this upper middle class of the free agency, and they've done well so far. Seiya Suzuki was a great signing. I think Dansby Swanson was a great signing. And they've stayed off some landmines, and I think this is, people on Discord have followed along so far in this one, but Alex Bregman's free agency case and his deal is really fascinating through the modern lens of contract analysis. And so that 1.0 of contract analysis was that you take your projected production and you divide it by how much is paid, and you get a sort of dollars per win number. And you look at how that looks in the marketplace. And if you look at Alex Bregman's $175 million and you say he starts at 4 wins next year, which is near all-star level production. That's what he's been doing at the plate and in the field. And you age that out a half win. What you get is 15 more wins over the course of his contract. And you divide that by the 175 and you say, oh, they're paying $11.5 million per win here. And that is just about in line, because last year I found that they were paying $10.5 million per win. So that's not so terrible. But then, as you mentioned, if you go through the different projections, well, not all of them start with 4 wins. Oopsie starts with 3.3 wins. And if you look at Zip's 5-year projections, they age him much more aggressively than half a win a year. And Zip's 5-year projections say he'll only have basically 11 wins over the rest of this contract. Now you're overpaying. But because there's this concept of like, how do you think he's going to age? If you think he's going to age on the better side, then you're going to say, maybe 12, 13, maybe those 15 wins are possible. And on the other hand, you've got the net present value of the deal. So they have $70 million of deferrals. That brings it down to $150 million. So even if they paid for 11 wins with $150 million of present value, because those $70 million in the future are not worth the same in the future as they worth now because of inflation. If you do that, then they're paying $15 million per win, even if they're only getting 11 wins. That's still not great. But lastly, there are critics. And so I'm struggling to find this, but there has to be a 2.0 for contract analysis. 1.0 was dollars per win. And 2.0 has to bring in these externalities. And some of these externalities are that the truth of the matter is dollars per win doesn't work the same for every type of player. If you look at relievers, for example, dollars per win doesn't work at all. They're really expensive by dollars per win every year because the relievers don't give you the same types of production that an everyday player does, right? So that's a thing. Then there's the other thing that critics of dollars per win bring up, which is that it's not like you have unlimited supply of all the players and you can sign all the players. You only have the players available to you that are available this offseason. And if you are at a certain part of the win cycle, like the Cubs are, they are in the middle of a good part of their win cycle. They are in the middle of a window, quote unquote, and you want to add a comfortably above average player, then the only options right now, if you want to add a near 4-win player, are Kyle Tucker, Alex Bregman, and Bo Bichette. And Kyle Tucker was somebody they had in-house, they'd had conversations with, and I think that they just thought, this is going to go to 10 years. This is going to go to $300 million for Kyle Tucker. And with Bo Bichette, he doesn't bring the same defensive value. Bo Bichette was one of the worst defensive shortstops in the big leagues last year. So he doesn't bring the same defensive value that Alex Bregman might. He's never played third. He may not have the arm for third. And so if you think about fit in terms of who's on the market and who fits what the Cubs do, which is they don't like giving out 10 years. They don't like giving out $300 million. And that's served them well in the past. Then that makes Alex Bregman pretty much a perfect fit, even if this contract stretches some of the dollars per win analysis.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to be critical through the 1.0 lens that you pointed out. But free agency is not where you get values. Free agency is where you close gaps and push yourself ahead of the teams near you in your division or in your league, trying to make deep playoff runs. That's what the Cubs are trying to do right now. I think that's really obvious. And I think when you look at the way the team's built short-term and the way the team's built long-term, they're going to have some interesting decisions to make after the season, right? Dansby Swanson is signed through 2029. Bregman's now signed through 2030. Those are the two guys that are locked in at high prices for the long haul, and you feel pretty good about them aging reasonably well. We finally did see a tick down defensively, at least metrics-wise, with both Swanson and Bregman last season, although both still look good enough to play on the left side of the infield for another year or two, or possibly a little bit longer. It could be a 1-year blip. But the bigger question you have for the Cubs is, what are they set up to do long term? So you got Bregman and Swanson as your pricey veterans. Shota Imanaga and Matthew Boyd and Jameson Taillon are all likely to be free agents. The only one who has a mutual option is Boyd. Those are rarely picked up, right? So you've got
they have almost
three
$100 million coming off of the payrolls next year.
Right, because the position player core also has a bunch of guys between Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, and Nico Horner. So you've got some really key players that frankly, because they're all sitting pretty close to qualifying offer type numbers. Like Happ's on a $19 million deal this year, Suzuki $19 million. Those are both probably qualifying offer guys. Nico Horner for sure. You're not actually spending that much more next year if they were to accept. Most likely they all reject and become free agents, and maybe you got to extend one of them or two of them. You're probably not keeping all three. But the good news is you've still got a lot of key pieces that are far away from free agency, right? Michael Busch has been a great addition for them. He's not a free agent until after 2029. PCA, I know it was an uneven season last year, but Pete Crow Armstrong is a key piece for them long term. They have him through 2030, right? Cade Horton, important. Big part of that rotation. They got him through 2030. No extension necessary.
They're not going to trade Matt Shaw because they've got him to 2030, and he can replace Nico Horner at second base next year if they have to, you know?
Yeah, I don't think they have any pressure to do anything else right now. I think they can sit tight with what they have. They have the best projection in the NL Central. They are favorites to win the division, right? Every team's chasing them now. And I think you can maybe make an argument that the way they're built right now is it's more like Bregman is replacing Tucker. And this iteration of Bregman versus last year's Tucker is probably a wash, but the Edward Cabrera edition and the big changes in the bullpen are the what has actually made them better than they were a year ago, right? Like the Bregman signing is fine, but that's what they had to do. They had to replace Tucker somehow, and this is the way they've decided to do it.
Yeah, I mean, some of the same questions that Alex Bregman has, Kyle Tucker has too. Kyle Tucker doesn't have good bat speed. You know?
Right.
Kyle Tucker does it mostly on walks and you know, walks and not striking out and having decent power, but not, you know, top end power. And so, you know, I think that some of this was just like, hey, if we can get Kyle Tucker but not do the 10-year thing, that just makes sense, you know. And you know, I think they're set up well. You talk about closing gaps and changing, you know, sort of projections, and they're now a win ahead of the Brewers in terms of, you know, projected wins above replacement next year. You know, that's the difference. That's another thing. Like, you know, when you talk about, oh, should I sign this 1.5 win player? I understand that dollars per win should be linear because that's how the market is. And that's basically how the whole framework is structured. But I don't think that teams necessarily all think that way because, you know, the Cubs, for example, they had Matt Shaw at third. They had a league average player at third. So there's no reason for them to sign another league. You can't say, oh, you know, you want 4 wins, just find it with 2 other 2-win players, or like, you know, add 2 3-win players, whatever it is. It doesn't work that way because their replacement level on the Cubs is super high in terms of who they've already got there. So if you wanted to improve on Shaw, you had to go sign a 4-win player, basically. And
yeah, unless Shaw was going to take that much of a leap in year 2, which, you know, I think his rookie season was a little bit of a mixed bag. We broke down his swing at the beginning of the year with Jed. There were some issues with it. He went down to AAA. He came back. At 29.4% hard hit rate is not what we expected to see. So I'm really keeping an eye on the quality of his contact in 2026. But he kept the K rate manageable, 21.5%, hit 13 homers in 437 plate appearances, contributed as a base stealer. It was still a 1.5 win player, even with a demotion to AAA and some major growing pains for him at the plate. And projections point to growth in year 2 for the most part. The Bat X doesn't, which is kind of interesting. But now I think you're looking at Shaw as someone that is your super sub. Maybe he plays almost every day and you pick your spots with him. And by next year in 2027, he's back into an everyday role again because you're not keeping all of the free agents that we talked about just a little while ago. So yeah, there's no pressure on them to do more than they've done right now, which I feel like is kind of their sweet spot, right? If there was still calls for them to go out and add one more piece, then I feel like that would be a level of aggression that they haven't, at least in recent years, been comfortable with.
And if it was one more piece, I think it would just have to be on the pitching staff, you know. But, you know, they've done some medium lifting, just like I said, you know, they are the medium lifting team. And they've done that with Phil Maton and Hunter Harvey. You know, they spent, that's like $15 million they've spent in the bullpen, you know, adding there. And, you know, they did the Edward Cabrera deal, I think, was a little bit out of their norm in terms of, you know, giving up real assets, but he's under control for 3 years. And, back to Shaw's usage, in case anybody's wondering what they should do with him on their fantasy leagues. I think you just got to hold because Matt Shaw, I think he'll play against lefties. Maybe Ballesteros plays at first. Maybe Bush sits and Shaw plays DH. And then there's going to be days when you just want to give Swanson and Horner a blow. I think you can push Horner over to short and Shaw plays second. And then Bregman doesn't have a perfect injury history, so there's a chance there for him to play there too. So in a 10 or 12 team league, I guess, I'd say put the over-under on plate appearances for Matt Shaw this year at about 500 maybe.
Yeah, it probably comes in short of that if they have generally good health outcomes as a group, and maybe above that if they catch a few more injuries than most.
Oh, there is a winner, a slight winner here right now.
Yeah.
Kevin Alcantara.
Yeah, because it's not an outfielder.
And Seiya Suzuki is playing now, is a right fielder, maybe. That if there is one more move, it could be a small platoon type outfielder. It could be somebody that frankly pushes Ballesteros back to the minors. You've got Tyler Austin that they signed to a really small deal. You could do something like that to get a platoon outfielder. Ballesteros goes to the minors, and you're basically Suzuki plays DH sometimes. Sometimes plays the field, but otherwise, Kevin Alcantara right now is the backup at every outfield position.
Yep, that's good for Kevin Alcantara in deeper leagues for sure. 6 years, $215 million in total now for Bregman. If you total up what he got from the Red Sox last year with this long-term deal with the Cubs, so Scott Boras showing us he's still got it. I think as far as getting his clients the most possible money over the longest period of time. The other part of the Bregman edition, too, you see a lot of writers talking and writing about just how big of a presence he is leadership-wise in the clubhouse, which is, it's also one of those things, if you're going to give someone more years or more money than you want, it seems like teams are a little more comfortable rounding up with players that carry that along with them.
Yeah, what I've seen personally from interacting with him and watching him interact with others is that he will do anything it takes to get better. Like he's open-minded when it comes to, what are you showing me? Is it biomechanics? Is it, something in my swing plane, this, that, or the other? Like he likes those things. He wants to know more. And so he shows younger players that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to be interested in these things. And, it doesn't all have to be all old school, grip it and rip it and just swing your way to success. You can kind of use some science in there. So he likes the science a little bit, but he also, I think from what I gather, cares about his teammates and is somebody that kind of checks in with people. There's a lot of people who just sort of go into work, this at your own workplace. There's people that just go into work, do their work and leave. And then there's other people who sort of are the glue in the office and kind of, check in with you over the cubicle every once in a while.
Yeah, man, I'm glad we're not in a cubicle situation here. It's just nice not to have that. But if you are in a cubicle situation, be a good teammate. Get up over those cubicles once in a while. The Bregman fantasy value angle here is pretty interesting just because January ADP at the NFBC, kind of a wide range of where he goes, pick 72 to 147. It makes him 113 overall. It's a 8th round pick in a 15-team league. I would guess that landing in a top 5 offense probably stabilizes that ADP pretty close to where it is. I don't think he would jump a ton because of the wider spread concerns about how his power will play in that park, I think are going to be a part of the conversation as well. So if you said he moves up 10 picks, moves down 5 or 10 picks, that wouldn't surprise me. But I think that's a pretty good market value for 2026 only. I'd be pretty comfortable getting into a few shares of Bregman at that price.
I don't have it in front of me, so paint me the landscape of third base around him. In terms of ADP, like doesn't he sort of represent a little bit of a cliff? Isn't there something it's not as great afterwards? Or
yeah, there's a pretty big fall. Like you get Austin Riley goes about 40 picks earlier. Michael Garcia goes about 40 picks earlier, and then you get this little pocket with Eugenio Suarez. We're still waiting for to find a new team. Bregman right there with him, and then Jordan Westberg. So you've got 3 options at third base there. A little bit of a dip before Noel V. Marte, who's also third base eligible, goes, but they're kind of all clustered together.
And then what happens after Noelvi?
Long gap down to the next third baseman, Matt Chapman, like 40 picks after that. Royce Lewis is in there. So it's a tier break.
You start
for sure.
getting injury concerns, batting average concerns. I mean, I think to me, Bregman is, if you want what you would consider a top third baseman, he's one of the last ones. And I don't really like Eugenio Suarez this year coming up. The strikeout rate and the age and the batting average, I think, is just, it's too much risk for me. So while I like Noelvi Marte and Jordan Westberg, obviously Alex Bregman is a different type of player, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you want a proven top third baseman, he's the last one. I like Westberg and Marte, and if you give me a few rounds, maybe I do take them because I believe in them, but that requires my belief and it requires them doing something they've never done. Neither one of them has given you 650 plate appearances at like a 4-win pace with, everything you want. So I think you're faith casting on some level.
I think if I missed out on that cluster though and had to wait, I'm okay with Matt Chapman as my third baseman if that's the position that I waited on the most, because he's going to play every day as long as the health stuff from last year is not a lingering problem in 2026. The power and run production will be solid. You're going to take a little ding in batting average, but it's going to be comparable, I think, to the ding you may get in power from Bregman. Like that's the category that I'm most worried about from Bregman. Maybe Oopsie's onto something where it's more like 18 to 20 homers than 23 to 25, but still lots of runs, lots of RBIs. They're going to put plenty of runs on the board in that Cubs lineup this year. Is there any other fallout from this? Like, do you think we finally get some movement with one of Bo Bichette or Cody Bellinger? I mean, Bellinger back to the Yankees just feels inevitable. It just feels like they're in the last round of fighting over whether it's another year or a few more dollars or how the deferrals are going to look. And I know Bo Bichette's meeting with the Phillies on Monday, so maybe Bregman being off the board sort of pushes the other teams that were in the conversation to make a decision one way or another on their interest in Bo.
Yeah, Bo Bichette meeting with the Phillies right as Bregman makes his signing sort of stands out for me. I think that while it doesn't port over perfectly, because I don't know that teams really want to play Bo Bichette at third, I think that he's not a shortstop any longer. And so, another infielder that's not a shortstop going, near the top of the market. Also, like we were saying, like if you want 4 wins on your team next year, Bo Bichette is one of the 3 guys left that could do it.
Yeah, it seems almost certainly to cost less than Kyle Tucker, right? So there's that factored in to making that decision as well. Let's get to the Gunnar Henderson news. So Gunnar Henderson was on a radio show, Orioles Hot Stove Show on WBAL last week, and he revealed that he played through a shoulder impingement for pretty much 3/4 of the year. And when I saw that on the RotoWire news page, it was just that light bulb, like, aha, there's the missing explanation. Because if I remember correctly, he had an oblique problem coming out of spring, but it was the kind of thing that didn't seem like it would bother him all year. And just based on usage, he played 154 games. Like he found a way to sort of grind through it. It was more steals than homers, just from where did the production come from. But he dropped from 37 homers in 2024 to 17 a year ago. A 529 slug down to 438. The barrel rate dipped from 11.2% to 8.5%. Still nearly a 5-WAR player playing with a bad shoulder. The discount's not massive. Compared to last year, it's like a half round. Now Gunnar Henderson lives at that end of round 1, beginning of round 2 turn. Pick 15 is the current ADP. I think that news from Gunnar, though, that they relayed on MassivSports.com, like that gives me confidence he's still pretty easily a first-round player for our drafts this year.
Yeah, his bat speed dropped over a mile per hour. Gunnar Henderson's bat speed dropped a mile per hour, and his arm strength dropped over a mile per hour. So, I think it definitely affected him athletically. The nice thing that you have with Gunnar Henderson, like we've been talking about with Alex Bregman, is I think that, why I like him so much is that he's got both of the athleticism. He's got, 95th percentile bat speed. And he runs well and he throws well. But I think he also has that feel for the game. You can see it the last 2 years, a walk rate over 10%, a strikeout rate better than league average, around 21, 22%. I love that, And so I just took a bite of the apple myself. I finished a draft just now. I was in the 15 slot, which I hated mostly because I was on the West Coast. I realized because, it's if you get auto picked, you get auto picked for 2, and I don't really like setting queues because, you're especially at the 15, you're waiting 28 picks. So you kind of want to see what's happening right before you get your picks. So I got auto picked a couple of times and didn't like it. But at the beginning, I went Gunnar Henderson and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at the turn. Felt good, but I felt like I also had to go, make some steals forward decisions later to make up for Vladdy's lack of steals. So I took Maikel Garcia over Austin Riley, which the Discord did not like, but that's okay. That's all right.
They're not going to love everything we do. Like it would be weird. It would actually be kind of bad if every decision we made, we're like, hey, what do you guys think of this? Like, yeah, love it. Like I don't want that. I don't want to live in an echo chamber of positivity. I mean,
I like had those same, like that same feeling when I was making the pick of taking Maikel Garcia over Austin Riley. I was like, God, this is not what I normally do.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned Austin Riley's name because I was doing some leaderboard surfing this morning. Did you know that over the last 3 seasons combined, which covers the first 3 years of Xander Bogaerts' 11-year deal with the Padres, that Xander Bogaerts has a higher F-WAR than Austin Riley? And they both had some injuries. I think Riley's missed more time, but how about that?
I did notice
surprise?
that after all my Xander slander, I did notice that his defense has kept him like. I'm not going to say that the deal is going to be good in the end because there's still like 10 years left.
No, like any deal like that is designed to just spread the money out and say we care about the first 5 or 6 years and we're not as worried about the last 5 or 6 years, right? And he's been good enough for the first 3 years, but 8 years to go.
I wanted to say that I wanted to retort that Austin Riley's quality of contact has gone down, and that's part of the story, but it hasn't really. The only thing with Austin Riley has basically been injury. So
yeah,
I think maybe it was the wrong pick, but you also have these. You have what also came up in our discussion was just what do you want out of your starting lineup? How do you want to do it? And there was another person at the Discord who was talking about he wants to be first place in every category but steals, right? And so he's going to build a less balanced team with maybe less variance because maybe steals don't age well. Steals are a little bit like batting average year to year. So, you could be saying, I'm going to stay out of the volatility of the steals and just try to be first place in all these things. I have chosen I'd rather be third place in every category and try to build balanced teams. And so, that's when you end up taking Maikel Garcia over Austin Riley because you want to make 180 steals, which is my target for 15-team leagues.
I can't believe no one's just saying they want to win every single category, right? Just be max ambitious.
I don't think that's possible, man. I mean, it happens
hard.
Sometimes.
It happens, but it's hard to do it. Like it takes a couple things bouncing your way, I think, to make that possible. You're right. You have to kind of choose what is going to be your relative weakness coming out of the draft when you're playing Roto, especially. Inevitably, you're going to have something that's not maxed out right away, but you might find it on the wire. You might have the pop-up steal season. Maybe last year you built the team around, Juan Soto as your first-round pick, and then you got some extra bags, and that closed the gap. If steals was your slightly weaker category, but Soto was your first-round pick, hey, look at that. It worked out. Sometimes it happens.
I feel pretty good about Gunnar this year. I mean, the thing that's hard though is that he burnt me last year, and so I had a couple of like 4th picks overall that were 5th picks overall that were Gunnar. I had the 2 or 3 shares at very high, and he didn't quite give you that return. But I think that one of the hardest things about fantasy is to not write off players that did that to you. Just be like, okay, he has a new price now. Do you think he's worth his new price?
I think this time last week, your feelings of being burned were even more valid than they are right now. Like they're still the truth. They are what happened, but I think now you've got more context that sort of explains like, hey, my process wasn't bad. His shoulder was messed up and now he's healthy again. So all is well. Let's get to a mailbag question. A few people in the Discord have asked about this, and there was actually one really good response in the Discord that maybe outlined everything that we're about to say on the pod, but not everybody listening and watching the show is in the Discord, so I think we should have this conversation. Jay Bird, among the many listeners and viewers, wondering if we could talk about the different projection systems. You know, there's a half dozen or so on the player pages at Fangraphs, depending on the time of year. Jay Bird's observation is that most of the time they give almost identical projections. Also, many times feel like the projection is just very close to the prior year output. I understand the most recent season is likely the most relevant in making projections, but do the systems ever give a bump to year 2 or year 3 player that was highly regarded as a prospect but struggled in his first season, as many do, such as Jackson Holliday? In summary, why are there so many when they all tend to give very similar projections?
I mean, the simple answer is it's a little bit like wins above replacement, where they have very similar frameworks. They, weight more recent information more heavily. They weight different stats that are stickier year to year more heavily than stats that are less sticky. For example, singles are impossible to model and are impossible they don't correlate well year to year. So singles, if you hit a bunch of singles, it's not going to give you a ton of value year to year because unless you're Luis Arias, the singles go up, they go down, whatever. But barrels are very sticky year to year. So if you do barrel the ball well, most of the projection systems will give you credit for that. Now, there's still these parameters that they call it. It's like how much weight do you give barrel? How much weight do you give strikeout rate? How much weight do you give that AA strikeout rate if they're 800 plate appearances into their career? I'm looking at Jackson Holliday right now, and there's a little bit of difference because the Bat X has been traditionally one of the systems that is probably the hardest on rookies and players with small samples in the big leagues. So the Bat X has the smallest projection. Bat X also has the most reliance on StatCast metrics like barrel rate and hard hit rate. And so because Jackson Holliday's barrel rate it's not bad, but it's not good. It's at 7.8% last year. That's sort of like average-ish. It's slightly above average. I mean, not average for all players, but for everyday players, it's average-ish. And his max EV is not that great, and his hard hit rate was 40%. That's around average. So because of all that, the Bat X, and because the Bat X doesn't give a lot of credit to minor league stuff or regresses the minor league stuff heavier than a lot of the other ones, the Bat X comes up the weakest on Jackson Holliday's bat. Just saying he'll be 5% above league average. Steamer is generally a little bit more positive. I think Oopsie might be the most positive system when it comes to rookies. The rookie translation there, it's called the major league equivalency. The MLE there in Oopsie is more positive than other projection systems. And Oopsie has bat speed in it, which I'm pretty sure that no other projection system has. Now, I don't want to speak for Jordan, but Jordan has said this to me that he put in bat speed pretty aggressively last year and that he's throttled that back a little bit. And the impact of bat speed is a little bit less this year than it was last year. But again, with Jackson Holliday as the example, his bat speed was only 25th percentile, but maybe because Oopsie gives more credit to these minor league stuff, Oopsie has him as 14% better than league average, as a hitter next year. So there's also a question of where's the league? The Bat X might have a different concept of the league. For example, if you look at pitchers, you can look at established pitchers. Let's look at Fromber just as an example. The Bat has the highest ERA, and I don't know that that's necessarily that it thinks that Fromber's any different than the other systems, because Fromber's got to be one of the more projectable players in the big leagues, right? I mean, he's done what he's done for so long. It's been very, very, very consistent. I think it's because the Bat has a higher league run average. Like it thinks that the league will score more runs than the other teams, than the other projection systems say. So that's a thing too. So, one thing that I have noticed in reading through the literature on these different projection systems is that on the hitting side, it's pretty clear what the best approach is.
Oh, yeah.
Composite.
Yeah, the composite, which is that's the ATC model. It's a composite.
ATC is a composite, or you can make your own composite. Like,
right.
You kind of want to maybe adjust for the league being different. Maybe the bat will just have every batter ahead because it thinks that, the league's going to score more runs or whatever. But you could do something as simple as sort of just averaging out the projections, and that would be more effective than any single projection. That's what the research has said. Now on the pitching side, pitching projections are just worse than hitting projections. And when we talk about things like using the auction calculator, or we talk about like how good a player will be next year, I don't really use pitching projections.
That feels a little bit scandalous, even though it's not.
I will use Oopsie because that's Stuff Plus in it, and Oopsie has performed pretty well in the tests I've seen. Steamer and Oopsie are pretty good. If you wanted to make a composite between Steamer and Oopsie, that might be pretty strong. I'm not saying I don't look at them, and when I make my rankings, I obviously use it pretty heavily. But I don't like put pitching projections into an auction calculator and just treat them as such, because I just feel like pitching, there's only one position in most leagues, P, right? And so there's none of this like, ooh, am I going to get the last third baseman, or you know what I mean? Like, so basically the way I build my teams is I'm trying to build the best lineup possible while jumping over to pitching whenever I give myself the opportunity, right? Like I'm like, oh, hey, wait, I can't really separate myself at third or second or short or anything right now. There's a bunch of players available. I'm going to jump over and get a pitcher. Okay, I'm back. So I never really look at, the auction calculator says that Jameson Taillon is worth $3 and this backup second baseman is worth $10. If I don't need a backup second baseman, but I do need a ninth starting pitcher, I'm going to take Taillon, So I don't use the auction calculator for pitching and use pitching projections in the same way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think it's good that you are revealing more about your process. Always good to be transparent about that. I do want to shout out Colin My Shot in the Discord for offering up a lot of background information about the projection systems. Pointed out that Zip searches through historical performance to find sophisticated comps and then projects future performance based on how players who look similar did historically. So that one, Zips is pretty different, I would say, for that reason. If you're just kind of like, why? How does Zips fit into this conversation? That's a pretty good summary of what Zips does. The other thing we talked about, if you didn't listen to the last episode, is you do have to look at the playing time differences. That came up in some of the questions too. Just look at the PA total, look at the innings pitch total, make sure it's something you're on board with, because those can fluctuate a little bit from system to system too. And if you're running those through the auction calculator, that will have a significant impact on the dollar values that it generates.
I believe that Oopsie just uses the depth chart playing time. And I think the bat does its own playing time, and that Zips does its own playing time.
Yeah, Steamer's got its own playing time component because Steamer has some of the biggest outliers. And I think that's where, at the beginning of draft season, if you're one of the early draft and hold sickos like we are, and you're thinking about tools people are using, projections people are using, that's where you got to be probably the most careful. James Wood's projection for playing time is pretty light on Steamer. Nick Kurtz's is pretty light. Even Holiday, I think 432 for at bats, 494 for plate appearances, probably a little bit lighter, especially compared to the other systems. It stands out to me as something that I'd be cautious to fully buy into. But yeah, interesting stuff because they do some things similarly, but there are enough differences to make it worth your time.
I did say someone say like, just pick your favorite for every player. And I get it. And it's not a terrible idea. But you also have to realize then you're sort of paying for upside on some level, That's why the composite's so good, because it kind of brings you back to earth. You might like one better than the other, but by compositing them, you sort of, you're taking away the chance that you might just be paying for the upside. Like you could say, I like James Wood's projection from Steamer best on a plate appearance level. But I don't like that playing time. So I'm just going to take the max playing time I see, the depth chart, 444 plate appearances, but I'm going to take the Steamer projection, and that's going to give me, 30 homers and 20 stolen bases. What you might be by accident doing is creating your own 60th percentile projection or 70th percentile projection and paying for the 70th percentile projection when we really want to be paying for 50th.
Yeah, it's a good way to think about it. But yeah, I think if you just completely shop across systems, there's enough differences, especially that run environment, where it can create a little bit of a problem for you as you go through and put a roster together. But yeah, thanks a lot for that question, Jay Bird. Hopefully that provided some more background and insight to anybody who was curious why there are so many different systems out there. 5 out there right now. The ATC comes out usually in late January, if I remember correctly, early February. So probably another
it
couple
needs
of
the
weeks.
other ones to come out first.
Right, yeah, it needs everything else out there. But now the Oopsie's out there, the Bats out there, Steamers out there. I mean, I think we're probably getting close. So we'll keep an eye out for that one to be added to the mix here soon. Some other news items to get to before we leave on this Monday. Max Kepler, as I mentioned up top, got an 80-game suspension for a positive PED test. It's a guy that hit .216 with a 300 OBP, under a 400 slug last year, hit 18 homers in 127 games. But he's a free agent right now. At that point in his career, this might be the end of the road for Max Kepler.
Yeah, and it's weird. The August and September splits, for all the jokes that he should fire his scientist, the August and September splits, he actually was slugging near 500 and was 15% better than league average at the plate. You just wonder if he saw maybe the end of his career coming and took a chance. Either way, I've seen some mixed reports on whether or not he has to sign first and then do the suspension. I believe what I read that said that he's basically being suspended now, and he can sign when the suspension is over.
Yeah, my guess would be that if he signed during his suspension, they would just say after the 80th team game for the team he signed with, he'd be eligible to play again. That's probably the most logical way.
But I'm not sure that he offers that much value right now to a team. I mean, it's near league average, but the defense has really fallen off. So you're talking about a platoon corner outfielder with bad defense that projects to be average or below average with the bat. It may just be the end.
Yeah, that might be the end for Max Kepler in the big leagues.
It's too bad. It's one of the last. One of the few Germans. We had Donald Lutz, who hit 1 homer in the big leagues and then left, and Max Kepler. That's all I know of at least modern German baseball players. So,
well, we probably got to go on a scouting trip to Germany and check on the pipeline. So
that's right. That's right.
We'll get in touch with the bosses, see if that's in the budget here for 2026. Did you do any scouting when you were over there?
No, I didn't.
See, that was a family trip. Right. Well, so yeah, the post scouting outings are in good hands now. You already did the pre-work for that. NL West trade, Jake McCarthy is now with the Rockies. Does it matter? Does Jake McCarthy get a chance to play a little bit more in Colorado, or is he just entering another big tumbler of options where, the playing time will be sporadic? I think the thing I like about it is he could be a good defender. He's not grading out as one, but he's got speed. He's got some fantasy tools, and playing half your games in Colorado certainly doesn't hurt. But I don't know, man. I don't know if he's going to actually break through there.
Well, I mean, you could make the most of Mickey Moniak by making him a platoon guy. He could probably, if you just made him face righties, he could probably be 5 to 7% better than league average as such. I think Jordan Beck deserves all the playing time he can get at 24 and as a righty that was near league average at the plate. And, he's just one of your young players that you have to give a full chance to, I think. And then Brenton Doyle is the best defender in center. So the question is, with Tyler Freeman there and Hunter Goodman, how does right field DH work out? Does Jake McCarthy, with better fielding probably than any of them, push his way to the front? Does Jake McCarthy take at-bats away from Jordan Beck and left late in games, defensive replacement? It's not clear to me that he has a role, that he just landed in a role, because there's still Moniak and Freeman and Hunter Goodman there at DH and right field.
Pitcher Josh Groves goes back the other way. I mean, McCarthy was out of options. I think this was just a let's get something back instead of going the DFA route on the Arizona side. But I did see Nick Pecora report that Ryan Waldschmidt could be in the mix for an opening day roster spot. I mean, that's sort of like, to me, the more interesting new development there. We could see Jordan Lawler get some reps in the outfield too, depending on what happens with the rest of their winter. But Waldschmidt would be another name kind of added, obviously, on the keeper and dynasty league radar already, but another guy that you'd start thinking about in draft and hold if we really see a path for him to be a part of the early 2026 plan.
I know nothing about him.
Got him in a couple of keeper leagues. He's been good.
First round draft pick.
Yeah, it's got power, it's got speed, good plate skills.
23 years old. Looks like he's pretty ready. I mean, he was a college guy, so.
Yep. Moving quickly.
I mean, they need to do something while Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is out. And, I'm not even sure that Adrian Del Castillo is a lock at DH. The offensive numbers don't scream DH to me. So there's some opportunity there. Even when Gurriel comes back, could he be the DH?
Yeah.
You put Cattell at DH sometimes. So you could make Blaze a utility guy, and Waldschmidt could take left field to begin the season. And you could still have Lawler starting and Waldschmidt starting, and Blaze is the utility guy.
Yeah, so that's what I'm keeping an eye on with Arizona. Can Ryan Waldschmidt actually break through and get a shot at the opening day roster come spring training? It's 66 games at AA last year, 43% better than league average, 9 homers, 19 steals, only a 17.7% K rate. Scouting report over at Fangraphs has plus bat speed on him, so I keep testing him, keep moving him up till you find something that he can't handle. He's been great so far.
Look at this team, man. They're such a weird team. Such a weird team. Like this,
they are weird.
If they had better pitching development or coaching or scouting or something, I mean, they spent money on this pitching staff, and they're going to go into the season with what I like their lineup. I like Blaze Alexander is your utility guy. You got 2 rookies and Lawler and Waldschmidt that could be impact guys, and they're your worst positions right now. And you're going in with Merrill Kelly, Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson, Eduardo Rodriguez, Mike Soroka. That's the plan.
I think they still need another bat, though. I mean, Pavin Smith right now is the projected big side platoon at first. Blaze is the projected starter and left if they don't go to Waldschmidt. Lawler's at third right now. I like Lawler, but we still don't know if he can hit in the big leagues. Del Castillo has questions like you mentioned, and they've still got Alec Thomas out there for his defense at center field. And I liked Alec Thomas a few years ago, but it hasn't happened yet. So I don't know. Like I think their deficiencies are growing after a couple of nice years. I'd hope for the sake of Diamondbacks fans they can keep pushing some chips in and find a way to remain relevant in the NL West here in 2026, because that pitching could be a problem. It absolutely could be.
They have some injury returning that obviously Corbin Burns is on this team, and will be for a while. And then you've got AJ Puck and who's the other hard thrower?
Justin Martinez.
Justin Martinez. So they'll come back eventually. That'll make the bullpen better. Maybe as soon as the second half this year or something.
Got to stay afloat though. You're relying on those long-term injury guys coming back. Some bullpen additions: Pierce Johnson to the Reds, who also added Michael Toglia on a minor league deal. So 2 other names in the fold for the Reds. I see Ryan Stanek landed with the Cards, and Bruce Zimmerman goes on a minor league deal given the state of that rotation. Wouldn't be surprising to see Bruce Zimmerman make a few starts at some point this year. Maybe the most interesting small move of this batch, though, Andy Ibanez signed with the Dodgers. It's a major league deal, and he at least hits lefties. So he's probably a platoon partner for Muncy, and then like a backup against righties at a few spots too. Muncy had a 59 WRC plus against lefties last season. K rate's been up in the 27-28% range in that split, so best to just get him out of the starting lineup against lefties at this point in his career. But in really deep leagues, Ibanez might be a useful, like, per start sort of player.
The build-a-bench for the Dodgers right now looks like Dalton Rushing, Hae-Sung Kim, Andy Ibanez, and Miguel Rojas.
Unless you're going to go, are you going to go with
that
a Kim,
leave room for
Kim Rojas platoon at second or Kim Ibanez platoon?
I just put Edman at the starter there, but
he's in center right now. Yeah, right now, the roster resource bench is Rushing, Ibanez, Miguel Rojas, and Alex Call. But that's with Pages in left, Edman in center, Teoscar in right, and then Hae-Sung Kim playing second base on the big side of the platoon.
Oh, they have Edman starting somewhere. Oh, because I have Pages starting in two places.
Yeah, Pages starting in left according to the roster resource.
And Edman starting in center. There we go. All right.
Yep. Last signing of the day. Eloy Jimenez gets a minor league deal with Toronto. Can it be the year? Can this actually be the year that it happens for Eloy Jimenez? I want it to be. I'm rooting for him. I want him to be good, but I've, in truth, given up on that for a couple of seasons now. Actually, just one season. After it didn't work out last year in Tampa, I've just resigned myself to a big L on the Eloy Jimenez experience.
I guess that's just, he's going to be in AAA until, someone gets hurt, maybe?
Yep. I think that's pretty much it at this point. It's too bad. What do you think he did at AAA last year? He only played 46 games combined.
5% above league average?
He was
10?
No, he was a 93 WRC plus over 40 games with the Rays and a 48 during 6 games with the Jays. So that's probably like a 90.
That's not good. I saw one little side one that caught my eye was Tyler Kinley signed with the Braves. I don't think that matters for saves or anything, but they let Pierce Johnson go and they signed Tyler Kinley, and there's a lot of similarities. Tyler Kinley throws 64% sliders, 12% curveballs, and 23% fastballs. And Stuff Plus says he shouldn't even throw that many fastballs. They got their own Pierce Johnson. His name is Tyler Kinley.
Yeah, I think the way that Atlanta bullpen looked in November was pretty bad. But now, as we move toward the middle of January, it's looking a lot better. They bring Iglesias back. They add Robert Suarez. They still got Dylan Lee. Now they added Kinley. Yoel Payamps is there. I mean, they've done a little better.
Fangraphs has them 8th.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, that's a pretty big turnaround. I think they were probably at bottom 10 to start of the offseason.
They have them ahead of the Rays and Mariners. I don't know that I would say that.
Well, when you think about park factors and then historical ability to find valuable relievers,
that's true.
Yeah, that probably tightens that up even more. But yeah, they fixed their biggest deficiency in Atlanta, I think, over the course of the offseason. It's amazing what these front offices can do if you give them just a little bit of time. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, our draft kit series begins with our position previews. That's coming up on Tuesday. We are pumped to dig into that, turn over every single stone in the player pool. Join the Discord if you haven't done so already. A lot of great conversation happening in there. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. We are back with you on Tuesday.
Thanks for listening.